Well, welcome to the talk, everybody. Thank you for coming. So I prepared some slides, and a lot of this stuff is kind of written out throughout with little prompts for myself to remember things that I'm wanting to share. Hopefully I'll remember that. The talk is Harmony of the Spheres, a chart in balance. And so that's just looking at how the, it's just playing on the things that I've been talking about in my prior talks. You know, I'm taking a break from talking about the specifically the planets and how the planets can best function in your chart. Whenever I've been talking about the planets previously, it's been building on this general developing understanding that I have working with astrology and working with the archetypes and dynamics in a chart, understanding that there's that when I'm looking at it from the lens of divine order, there's not a negative aspect, that there aren't inherently negative aspects or qualities or traits to any of the signs, any of the planets, that it's, when we experience that negatively, it's just our resisting the energies that are there, that they're naturally wanting to express themselves in a positive way. So, for example, if another way of explaining this is if you've done any work using pendulums or divination tools, or if you do work with muscle testing, then you learn that you have to present your questions or the things that you're wanting to know something about framed in the positive. You can't use negatives, like saying you can't ask a pendulum, should I not do something? It doesn't understand in the negative. So you have to say in the positive, and either you'll receive the muscle test or the pendulum will answer in the affirmative, or it'll go, back and forth. So so I didn't bring a pendulum, but with the necklace, I've never heard of anybody having a pendulum give them a no that's the circle. It's just always been, back and forth. And then when it's for a no, when it's a yes, it's either like a circle going this way or the other way. For me, it goes to the left. But that's, again, just going back to this idea going to the idea that the circle is a positive, that the sphere is more representative of what we're looking at when we're looking at the chart. We're looking at it as a whole, as a sphere. And so the back and forth being the negative, that's whenever it's not in alignment, when it's not working in divine alignment. And that is the introduction of polarities. And so when we experience polarities in our lives, we are experiencing resistance to what is naturally wanting to occur. When it's divine, it's fully integrated. It is the circle. It is the sphere, which contains all things, without having any negative connotations to it. So I'll probably be able to explain that a little bit better when we're getting into the slides. And so I just wanted to preface with that because I felt like it was important for me to go back to the information that I've been getting in all my other talks. And you can go back and listen to my introduction talk too on using the chart as a tool for birthing consciousness. And in that talk, I'm introducing this whole concept that the chart is expressed as positive only. But we'll talk about that a little bit more throughout. So getting into it, just understanding the wheel in general, and this is something that probably many of you have already learned. But for me, it's something that I really do look at when I'm looking at someone's chart. It plays a big role for me, and that's understanding what quadrant in a chart something is taking place. And so you can understand a little bit more about how that is being expressed. The first quadrant are the houses 1 through 3, and it's has to do with the awareness of self. So it's the soul's impulse to experience itself in the environment. It wants to know what this whole business of having a self is. And so it plays with this experience, this way of expressing itself out in its environment. So with Aries, that's just the natural impulse want to break out there and just do stuff. And then it can kind of see through cause and effect, like, oh, this happened when I did that. That's interesting. Or that happened. It's not really strategizing on the effects that outcomes that it wants. It's just the raw experience of it. You know, in Taurus, it's that your environment is now learning to give you some ways to support yourself through it. And Gemini, it's the experience of just the mental experience of just trying to understand now, like, what's in the environment, so that you can gauge it. It's more like thought experiments. The second quadrant is all about the integration of self with environment. I might talk a little bit more in depth about that in other slides. And so I'm going to just kind of go over this in a really general way. So the integration of self with the environment in the second quadrant, the third quadrant being the awareness of others. Now you're aware that there are other people in the environment, and that becomes interesting, and you start questioning who you are in relationship to others. The fourth quadrant is all about integration of self with society at large. And so it's taking everything that has culminated through the first three quadrants, and now it's projecting yourself out into a larger whole, out into the collective. So for next slide, the yin and yang of the polarities, there's a lot of different ways that people view that. The polarities are sometimes referred to as male or female, more masculine and feminine, could be seen as positive versus negative. And then the modern astrologers prefer to call polarities active and receptive. And this is the first, this duality is the first form of classification in astrology. The way that I understand that, coming through the lens of yin and yang, has been really helpful for me personally and how I apply it in my life. The aspect of yin and yang, the yin is much more, hold on. I'm going to jump to the next slide, and then I'll come back to here. So the yang is the striking out. It's the action, invention, creation, will, intent. White, because it's kind of shines the light out. It's more of the way that the white contains all things, but in a beaming sort of a way. The fire signs and the air signs are all yang. So that's Aries, Leo, Gemini, Libra, Sagittarius, and Aquarius, which are all much more like active and assertive. So the yin is more of the holding energy. It's feminine, matter, structures, the observer, absorption, black. And so for black, and I put those descriptors in, the black and the white. The black is more of it absorbs all colors. You know, it takes what's coming out and it is able to kind of take that in. And so I relate the yin to structure and matter, because it's what we have manifested for ourselves based on how we exert our willpower onto our environment. So through that yang Aries energy, you want to express yourself in the environment, and you're putting that will out. So then your environment has to kind of shape around how you're engaging it. And that's where you get to Taurus being the yin. And so then your environment starts to reflect back to you what you're putting out. So if you're putting out, from an Aries standpoint, things that might be more karmically driven, then your environment might reflect back at you, a lack of worth. And with the Taurus archetype having to do with worth, versus when you're putting that out at a place where it's a little bit cleaner, then your environment might reflect to you that all of your needs are met. And so you can see how that when you're progressing from sign to sign, going from the yang to the yin, you go from a much more outward, active sign to the next one. It has now been informed about what kind of container that's going to be for that energy that you're creating. The yin is the the signs that are earth and water signs. So that's Taurus, Virgo, Cancer, Scorpio, Capricorn, and Pisces. And it's much more receptive and reactive. So the all yin, like I said, I see all yin as structure in various forms. You know, it holds what we've manifested through the yang impulses. Now just skipping back. So the polarities, it's interesting. When you think about balancing in the chart, you think of, you know, the sign that's on the opposite side of the chart being a polarity. You would imagine it would be kind of the opposite energy, but it's not. The sign on the other side of your chart is actually your ally. So notice that the polarities of each sign share a yin or a yang. And the polarities are allies. They understand each other. The air feeds water and empowers it. The earth needs water for life. And so, like I said, all of the yang energies, the polarities are all the fire and the air signs. And all the yin are the water and the earth signs. So now, skip on. So something that has been helpful for me in understanding these polarities through the yin and the yang, as opposed to seeing it as the positive or negative or active, receptive, any of those things, it really clicked for me in understanding it more from the yin and yang perspective, because classically, when you understand what the whole concept of yin and yang is, it's actually not yin or yang. It's actually yin yang. It's the tooth activated together. And so the ability to be both active and receptive at the same time, the ability to be balanced both with the masculine and the feminine, the ability to have all of those things balanced inside of yourself so that you can hold that. That's what leads to embodiment, and that's what gets us out of dualistic thinking. So it's because of dualistic thinking that we're experiencing our chart from negative perspectives, or we're experiencing it as opposition. And I'm actually feeling less and less comfortable with even using the word opposition to describe signs anymore that are on the other side of the chart from each other, because it's the more I experience integration, like through my meditations or just in the different ways that I've been able to achieve that in various moments when I feel that really lock on, that's when you get away from believing in opposites. It's just that, like with the pendulum, you know, when you see something from either one end or the other, it's really easy to see those two things as opposites and to see them as being in opposition to each other, versus whenever you are in an integrated moment, and when you're experiencing your chart from an integrated place, that's no longer, you're not experiencing it through duality. You're able to experience all of it at once, and you see where the circle is complete. You've only been tuned in to either one end of the circle or the other. But whenever you're integrated, you see where the edges meet, and you see where it all connects and comes back around again. And so that's my goal with astrology, is understanding the chart in a way that helps you to become integrated so that you can live through that completed circle and overcome your dualistic relationship with your chart. So what I had talked about in my prior talks, too, if you've seen them, has to do with, again, that just when we're experiencing something in our chart from a negative place, that it's not that your chart is negative, or that those planets are negative or even have negative attributes. It's just showing you where you're resisting their natural expression, where you're resisting the natural energies of those planets to express themselves positively. And when you resist that because of the various karmas that you hold and the ways that you get in your own way, the belief patterns and conditioned beliefs throughout, our lifetimes that we've developed that we have to break through. Those planets trying to express positively, when they run into that resistance, their impulse is to break through it. And so we might experience them in a harsh way, but it's just because they're breaking through our own defenses. And also, just to touch on the whole masculine, feminine. So I wholeheartedly believe that this phase that as humanity that we're striving toward is an integrated masculine and feminine. It's our ability to really integrate both fully, that we're not resisting one or the other. And so from that place, we are able to access simultaneously that that creator and the created. We're able to embody what we've made here on the planet, the structures that we've created to carry our 3D, maybe 5D or whatever realities, but we're able to embody that while really fully expressing ourselves from the seat of the creator. So that's that masculine and feminine integration. So and that's just bringing our higher selves into form. That's what we're working on here, is building up our ability to really inhabit that in a form. The form being that that yin that holds that, the creator being that yang energy. So integration. So just onto the signs here. This is by no means, an inclusive list of the attributes of the signs, but just some good starting points for descriptions about the various ways that the signs balance each other out. And I'll pause here in case there are any questions at this time.
I have a question.
Yes, hi, Dawn.
Hi. Wonderful. I'm so totally with you. I love it.
Good.
So how do you feel about this impacting our ability to integrate that Pluto polarity point and all polarity points?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it's perfect, isn't it? I mean, Pluto is the perfect example because because that's where we really get to engage with our karmas. I mean, we engage with that everywhere, but that archetype is just, it so fully brings that to our awareness for us. So all of the ways that we resist, that's because of our conditioning. That's because of our karmas, and I don't only look at it as karmas. I think that there's our ego. So that's Leo, first formed in the Cancer archetype, expressed through Leo, where and I talk about this a little bit too when I get to those sections, but where we have that's one way that we put up buffers to what's happening, and that those buffers create resistance. There's our deconditioning that we do through the Capricorn archetype, where we face our social conditionings and we work on putting down those resistances. But Pluto's really bringing up those karmas for us in a way that is meant to really break through our resistance, and that's why it gets a bad rap. And I go into that pretty deeply in my Pluto talk. But just the fact that the understanding how the polarity point of Pluto really helps us in that regard can go a long ways to then really getting the importance of the polarity points in all of the charts. Did you want to maybe clarify if your question was asking for something a little more specific than that? I realized you just gave a really general answer.
No, that was perfect. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. And Linda, I apologize, but I don't have my phone next to me, and I don't want to run around and find it, but I'm not tracking time, and I don't want to go over. If you wouldn't mind just giving me a shout out occasionally about the time.
Sure. Yeah, I will.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Are there any other questions at this time? Okay, so the Aries and Libra archetype is a really powerful way that this shows up in our lives, the call to embody, the call to integrate. And truly, integration is embodiment. And that's what our chart is there for us. Like I said, the way that we might experience something negatively is just showing us where we're not integrated. And so by balancing ourselves out through all of the polarity points of the chart, we can become a more integrated individual, and we can really embody our true selves fully. And the Aries Libra archetype, so Aries being that first sign of the chart where it's just all about wanting to break out and just say, okay, let's get going. What is this whole, energy about being here? What is experience? And there can be repercussions to that aren't really considered. In the Libra archetype, all of a sudden now you're in the fourth quadrant and you're really faced with those, how your environment affects other people, what you do in your environment affects other people. So that becomes the new level of curiosity. I'm just going to read here. It says, Aries seeks to experience the environment. Libra brings awareness and curiosity to the fact that there are others in the environment. And Libra, being the beginning of the third quadrant, has a whole new energy to it. Aries wants to see what happens when engaging. Libra is more curious about others and exploring personal relationships. Aries is coming from more of an individual orientation and is of the first quadrant, where it's all about developing awareness of self. Libra starts the third quadrant and is all about self in relation to other. Libra calls for the balancing of self and other. Libra being balance, being the scales. When polarities are not in balance, the Libra archetype can be expressed codependently. So attached to and selfishly oriented in relationship. Sometimes not even realizing that you're selfishly oriented, being really giving, but the underlying subconscious thought of, if I can really understand my partner's desires, then I can make them dependent on me so that I can feel secure in my own desire for a connection to other. This comes from the Aries aspect not being balanced and still self-oriented. This imbalance can also inform the container that is developed through Scorpio. And we all know what that looks like, being that most of us here study evolutionary astrology, the importance of Scorpio and Pluto, and having us really face the effects of the consequences of our actions. And I put a little note here for myself to talk about the separation of the spheres. And this has been huge for me in integrating my own Aries and Libra to the best that I've been able to at this time, still working on it, of course. But I was given this. It was actually, I was needing support with a Scorpio in my life who was wanting to sting me and my family so much. And she kept trying to pull us into her world in a way that was really hurtful. And if we didn't give her energy, then she wanted to hurt us. This dynamic was just becoming just really, really harmful to me and my family. And my husband actually went and sought help, with this from an outside person. And this person gave me just the most incredible advice. And I don't think they realized how much of an impact that would have on my whole life and inform so much of my own understanding. But it was all about the separation of the spheres, is what they described. That's that me, Melanie, I have my sphere, the family that I want to protect, we have our sphere that is the family, but me personally, I have my own sphere, that contains me. And the other person has theirs. And she explained that when she reaches out to sting, she's going into our sphere to do that. She's going to try to hurt me because her attempts to pull me into her sphere weren't working. But either way, she's not respecting those boundaries. And so the solution always is to fully show up at the edge of your sphere, to come all the way here and no further. And that gives the other person the opportunity to meet you there. And so now you can really meet face to face. And if someone's not willing to meet you there, if they can't come all the way to the edge of their sphere and do that work to come to the edges of themselves in order to really meet you and have a conversation, then you're not willing to do that work for them. You're not going to do the work to pull them into your sphere to go all the way into theirs, because then that knocks you off balance. And if they try to pull you, you just hold the boundary like, no, I'm coming this far. You need to come the rest of the way. So there's been a million different ways that that's played out in my life, but what that's done is actually like implementing that with myself in relationship to just everyone has shown me how much we take for granted whenever we aren't showing up fully. We're not coming to the edge of our spheres fully. We expect somebody else to do the work for us. We expect someone to come in and pull it out of us sometimes. Or we might have a knee-jerk reaction to someone else where we're trying to pull something out of them all the time. And that's a very Libra thing to do. It really is to like to live so much in other people's spheres so that you can try to accommodate whatever's happening with them so that you can feel okay. That's something that I learned about myself as an empath growing up, having this tendency to just naturally be sensitive about what's going on with other people in my environment, and then feeling like I need to caretake them so that I can feel okay, because when they are unbalanced, I don't feel okay. I feel imbalanced. And so doing the work to really stay in my own sphere turned out just realizing how permeable I was, and to really gather up and strengthen these boundaries for myself and to be in my own sphere fully is helping me to do the work so that I can now thrive more in relationship and stop doing other people's work for them. And then that gives them the ability to really rise up. It calls them out to really meet me there. So the Aries Libra archetype, it's been a really powerful way of understanding where you get knocked off balance and how to come back. And the whole spherical thing, like whenever I'm working on being here, then I learn about what it means to actually really be embodied, to be fully embodied in myself. And I can do this all the way. I can do Melanie now, much more fully from a much more embodied place if I can remember that. So that's a good lesson for me for putting this into action at least. So this Taurus Scorpio archetype, they're both yin. So these signs have different needs being met, and they are where we see what we have manifested through the Aries Libra archetypes. The Yang archetypes are the various ways by which through our willpower we strike out, we manifest, and the Yin archetypes hold what we've manifested, either consciously or unconsciously. So coming from the Aries impulse toward experience of the environment, in Taurus, we see how our environment can nurture us so we can continue on the path of discovery. Our environment beckons us to slow down, eat something, get some rest, be loved. We learn to value what nurtures us in our environments. Taurus is sustenance. Scorpio is the container we've developed, which holds our deeper lessons we're learning through relationship. It is our commitments, our promises, the hidden depths that we discover when we decide to look at what is behind our motivations in relationship, the karmas we've created. And of course, there's much, much more to Scorpio than that. So in the Taurus, oh yeah, right. So let's see. There is, I actually wrote more about Scorpio than that. So Taurus and Scorpio are both about resources and about worth. Taurus has to do with the resources that sustain our bodily needs, and Scorpio is connected to the resources that engage our desires and our soul's needs. So when not in balance, our desires are more karmic in nature. Our soul seeks connection and sustenance and fulfillment, yet has to process karmas that are in the way of true fulfillment. We run the risk of projecting karmically our beliefs about our resources or self-worth onto our environment through the Taurus archetype and manifest hard times or rejection. So in evolutionary astrology, we fortunately know that the theme of Pluto's polarity point, Pluto being the acting agent of Scorpio, can really help to restore balance. And so this is something that maybe I take for granted, you know, being a group of primarily evolutionary astrologers. I take for granted that people would know this, but it's just worth saying. The reason why the polarity points balance each other out is because each one has what the other is needing to kind of remember. You know, you develop the one thing and you develop the other thing. They're really meant to work in concert with each other. When you're too tuned in to one side or the other, you know, it knocks you off balance. And so I'm hoping that that is evident throughout all of these slides about the signs. I hope that that really comes through and how I'm trying to really compare the two, but I just want to make sure that that part is clear. So Gemini and Sagittarius. Does anyone have any questions by this moment? Okay. And I'm curious, so you guys can't see me, can you? I'm just curious because I can't see myself. Oh, you can? Okay.
Yeah, you're up in the upper right corner.
Okay, got it. Got it, okay. I was just seeing Linda, so I was kind of curious, like if I made a face or anything, if you guys are even seeing me at all. All right, so I'll be in the video. So Gemini and Sagittarius are both the yang energy. In Gemini, we explore ideas for the sake of exploring ideas. We share and exchange ideas, and it is the path of pure discovery for the mind. It's the development of the mind and our sense of it, which needs mental engagement. In Sagittarius, we deepen into the meanings behind the ideas, and we look for the higher truths. We journey with greater purpose. We want to apply what we know, not just categorize it. Sagittarius is the final stage of the third quadrant, being where we develop awareness of other. So it's our first foray into the collective. Both yang energies. In Gemini, we explore ideas for the sake of them, for exploration, and we share and exchange ideas, and it's the path of discovery. I might have said that already. It's the development of the mind and our sense of it, which needs mental engagement. In Sagittarius, we deepen into the meanings behind the ideas. So we look for the higher truths. We journey with greater purpose. We want to apply what we know, not just categorize it. Sagittarius, well, I think actually that might have been copied twice. But when out of balance, Gemini is flighty and unfocused. So that's kind of funny that a lot of the stuff got accidentally repeated in Gemini, feeling like it's very much of that energy. It's the twins. So when out of balance, Gemini is flighty and unfocused, while Sagittarius can be dogmatic. So pulling from Gemini helps us to remember not to be single-pointed and to the effect of being closed-minded. And Sagittarius helps Gemini to focus. So the Cancer Capricorn archetype, they're both yin. And in Cancer, the unstructured nature of raw experience and thought inquiries gives rise to the container of the home and of the family that helps to mold us. In order to better direct our motivations. It is the raw experience of the home and childhood that shapes our motivations through the dawning of the ego. The ego is our shell, the buffer that future experiences are filtered through. The ego is developed in a yin sign, with yin representing the container that the ego is. Yin is holding energy, and so the ego holds our conditioning and beliefs formed in childhood, beliefs about what we think the world really is or our place in it based on our childhood experiences and our home life. Cancer marks the beginning of the second quadrant, so we move from a point of awareness of self and environment to ourself in relationship to environment. So Capricorn is what we've designed based on our collective beliefs. It's what we as a society have manifested based on our collective filters. Capricorn marks the beginning of the fourth quadrant. It is how we apply our lessons in such a way that we orient towards society. Capricorn is the beginning of the fourth quadrant. It takes the understandings we've developed for ourselves through the institution of the home and applies it to what we've built in order to hold the needs of society, the greater institution. So it's the collective agreed upon beliefs, but it is the lowest common denominator of them. So these signs are out of balance when our filters and egoic beliefs are fear-based. In Capricorn, when our manifested structures are fear-based, we experience institutional oppression. Through fear, we give our powers away to structure, such that the structure no longer truly serves us. We can take comfort, of course, in remembering that Capricorn is a cardinal sign. So we must not fear change, so that we can allow our structures to be made new again as needed. And the 4th and 10th houses they're so aligned with conditioning. with the 10th being that, that collective conditioning. It's the societal conditioning. It's all the ways that we have kind of molded ourselves to those expectations. And so, and then the 4th being that home life conditioning that starts to really develop our beliefs about ourselves in relationship to our environment, with our home being that first place where that really takes place. But of course, it's not just that. I mean, if you, when it's acting in a place that's much more in harmony, our home means nurture, and it gives us that first taste of really being nurtured and mattering in the mother's arms. It's the place where we feel like we have a home. We get to be a part of something that holds us more than just the environment that we might have been experiencing through those other energies. Capricorn is able to kind of hold that structure for us in a much more collective way. And so ideally, those things are all working for us optimally. Obviously, right now on the planet, that's not the case. And so we have to really pay a lot of attention to what we're taking on in our childhood. Those are the things that mostly we find that we go to therapy to heal. We need to focus on childhood education and child rearing. It's so important because those are the things that are going to really raise the collective denominator, so to speak, so that we can, obviously have a better future. So with the Leo and Aquarius archetype, both yang, Leo is where we learn to really play with engaging our environment as children. So it's that real childlike expression with the environment. We get to explore our curiosities and delight in being witness for what we do and for what we create. Leo is where we experience our ego through the yang impulse. So again, projecting out to the environment. Our ego is now put into action. We want to experience ourselves from the point of this new lens, based on what filters we've developed. So we strike out and then test these filters on the world. We test ourselves and our impacts. We create and we express, again, being oriented toward the experience of self, but now in relationship, a new kind of relationship to the environment. Instead of just experiencing the environment, we are now in relationship to it. So this dynamic is at a balance when it is driven by negative aspects of ego. When it is in balance, it is an expression of the heart, because the Leo is pure heart. Aquarius brings this impulse to the 4th quadrant of the chart. It is creative, as Leo is creative, but from a place of innovation. Its creative contributions push society's boundaries. It wants to express itself as yang energy, as Leo wants to express, but seeks to move away from the filters of the ego and to express what is most authentic to the soul as an individual, which takes the Capricorn energy of social structures and calls it to the task of expanding beyond the lowest common denominator of collective beliefs. Aquarius questions these, sometimes ferociously, as a defender of what it believes is right. When Aquarius is out of balance, it gets caught up in the egoic image of being unique or as a rabble rouser, rather than being truly authentic to the heart. Leo, the heart of Leo helps to bring this balance in. And then, of course, Aquarius helps to balance out Leo whenever you take that energy of Leo to create, that instinct to create and be in the environment, and now you put it more out in the community, and you that's where Aquarius represents more community, more as like your tribe, more like your home and out in the world a little bit more than Capricorn would be. It's where your people are, when you get to feel like you're really a part of something. So Virgo and Pisces are both yin. And in Virgo, we are in the final stage of the 2nd quadrant, and we're developing awareness of the next quadrant, which is about awareness of others. So we begin to analyze the behavior of self and other and take on the task of giving it more purpose or meaning. If we've been flighty or selfish in our Leo aspects, then we might subconsciously feel we need to atone in Virgo. We want our contributions to be worthy. Virgo is service. So when out of balance, Virgo is judgmental. It's the tendency to really see what you're getting wrong. And so Virgo, when it's not able in a balanced place and it's resisting, it's not actually really looking at itself. And so it projects that out and it's being judgmental of others. But when it's in balance, that ability to really see what's wrong or right better, to see how something could be better, that lends itself to being discerning. And so discerning being the more balanced way of engaging that energy. And Virgo is able to get an overview of the details of a situation in order to discern what is right and apply this discernment to better serve, rather than to judge and criticize. The Pisces is the final sign of the fourth quadrant, and it's where everything that we have built through through our will, even if unconscious, the manifestation, what we've manifested, comes to dissolve. I'm going to read that again. So Pisces is the final sign of the fourth quadrant, and it is where everything that we have built through willful manifestation comes to dissolve. It comes to be surrendered. Our experiment with the collective gives way to the infinite and eternal, and boundaries blur to allow deeper access to what is, quote, beyond. So when in balance, Pisces is forgiveness of self and other. In balance together, Pisces and Virgo are the white Tara and the green Tara. White Tara and white Tara and green Tara are actually the two different sides of the same energy. It's the same being expressed in a couple of different ways. And so that, to me, thinking of Pisces and Virgo that way was really wonderful and made a lot of sense, that what it looks like to come back and be integrated versus what it looks like to do the work from two different ends of what is in reality turns out to be the same thing. So white Tara is compassion, and green Tara is compassion in action, in order to serve humanity. So do we have any questions at this point? And is it okay if I get a time check?
Yeah, you can have another 25 to 30 minutes if you wish.
Okay. Do you happen to see a Francisco showed up?
Yes, he's here. Yes.
Hi, friends. I see you now. Hi, Francisco.
Sorry to be late. Thank you.
Okay. I'm wondering at what point you were able to arrive, just as far as where I was and what I had already shared.
About when you were in Sagittarius and Geminis.
Okay, got it. Okay, so moving forward, then we can go to your chart now, and unless there are any, if anybody wants to say anything at this kind of in between moment. Okay, so I didn't put a whole lot of notes here on this. I wanted to talk. I wanted to hear from you a little bit more, and so I didn't want to necessarily quote, like you had emailed me about the things that you were looking at in your chart and that you were wanting to talk about, but I didn't want to presume to quote you on that. So I'm wondering if you could share a little bit in your own words.
Yes, sorry. I wrote you an email saying that you were free to discuss anything you wanted, but since we didn't have any chance to discuss that, well, like to you, I want to balance several energies, a lot of yin in my retrograde planets and yang in my straight planets.
Mm-hmm.
My ego, Leo, in the, Sun conjunct Venus in Leo in the first house, square Jupiter, which magnifies all the ego or Adonis complex setting is Venus in Leo, as opposed to Mars in Aquarius retrograde, conjunct my North Node, trine my Uranus in Libra.
Yeah.
On the one hand, on the other hand, this other opposition, like Saturn in the 10th, which is, in my case, castrating mother, not very feminine to say, opposed to Neptune in my 4th, which is a Neptunian father. He's also a Scorpio. He was an alcoholic. He always debates anything. He debates anything. What else? Well, this Sun Neptune square, it makes me, on the one hand, very sensitive and compassionate, but I can also be very cruel.
Mm-hmm.
I also have very strong spiritual needs, but also strong ego needs. An example of that would be, like, 4 years ago, I went to a darkness retreat in Thailand. It was a retreat in 3 weeks in total darkness, meditating. But I wanted to treat myself and fly first class. Thanks to miles I had saved up. I didn't pay cash. But I wanted to pursue my spiritual desires, but treat myself.
Yeah.
Treat my ego.
Yeah, for sure. And do you feel that treating yourself is in alignment with the spiritual endeavors? Are you more of the mindset that spiritual endeavors means you have to suffer or go without? It doesn't seem like you are.
I don't think so. It doesn't. It's nobody says it's a requisite to suffer and let's go in donkey and swim in order to make the experience worth it.
Yeah. Right. I'm sorry. Say that again. You said that just say that again.
Yes, that like suffering is not a requirement for a spiritual endeavor to be worthwhile.
Right. Okay. Got it. So have you looked at the South Node being on your ascendant there? That's something that you've given much thought to? I'm just curious because there's a lot in your chart that really stands out to you, and I'm curious about that one piece.
About say again, please.
About your South Node being on your ascendant, conjunct your ascendant.
Well, I don't know exactly what that means.
Okay.
I've noticed that, obviously.
Got it. So I'll just dive in, if that's okay for you. When you talk about mother and father, what really jumps out to me, and maybe it's just different, looking at astrology through different lenses, or depending on, I know that people will kind of tend to gravitate towards certain planets representing mother or father. For me, that's Saturn has stood out in the past, and in this case, to really hold that strong father energy. A lot of times the moon will say mother to me, but in this case, what just really makes a lot of sense based on what you were sharing is everything happening there in that 10th house, 4th house axis. So the way that you described your mother, I use the terms, looking at this in the chart, I was looking at that Neptune energy as being kind of aloof, having an aloofness, that when you said maybe naive, it's, for me, that's what that felt like a little bit, was that the aloofness, but also in conjunction with that Jupiter Scorpio energy, which is has like a harshness, which seems kind of like an interesting combination. The way that you described it, you said that she was harsh, but then also naive.
Right.
So that seems like that's kind of a trip for me. I've known people in the past that have been narcissists, and they tend to think everyone's out to get them. But you were attributing that to your father, having that kind of a suspicious mind. And so I just thought that was so interesting. And I'm seeing that in the polarity and the Saturn opposing that Neptune and Jupiter. So being in Gemini, I was seeing that Gemini is influencing that kind of suspicious mind in opposition to that Jupiter pulling in that Scorpio energy. Those two things together, just that kind of having that maybe a kind of a hyper imagination when it comes to other people's motivations and wanting to plan around that. Is that something that you've looked at really, is relating to that, the more of the Saturn having that energy, where your father, you also described him as being just all about traditional, values around just like supporting the family, and then you work and you do the job and you do it the way that your culture tells you have to do it?
Yes. Well, my father expects me to have a job, play it safe, wear suits every day. People call me Mr. Ramirez España or Ingeniero Ramirez España. Not the janitor calling me by my first name. That annoys him, you know how much, but I'm happy with that.
Right. And then what feels like really integrating the dynamics that you were talking about. You were asking about taking those things that your mother and father were representing and how to kind of go build your own relationship with the masculine and feminine inside of you. I'll just say that it's interesting seeing how this is presenting in your chart to me. What stands out is the fact that you have so much that is retrograde in your chart, which is really bringing in that much more receptive yin energy. But yet you have so much yang energy in all of that stellium that you have in Leo, also being expressed on the ascendant. And the thing that also was bringing up for me this strong kind of, I made a note here about kind of squishiness between present life and past life. And that's just based on how that you have a lot of retrograde in your chart. And I took out a lot of the asteroids and stuff because they were just a little bit distracting to my eyes. But you have quite a bit more that's retrograde when you add that in. And if you're familiar with that concept, it's that when you have a lot, when you get over a certain threshold with retrograde in your chart, then it starts to feel like there is a lot more from the past that kind of bleeds through here than what we're normally consciously aware of. And it can make it so that we're just less focused on, whatever is happening in front of us in this lifetime. We're working out so much from the past, that there can be a little bit of a blurriness between, and we all are working out things from the past here. It's just usually it's manifesting here in ways that help us to really just kind of focus on what's here. But with you, it feels like there is a much more openness, and something that just the retrograde planets alone wouldn't have given me that strong of a feeling, except that those retrograde planets are really active in your chart. They're engaging so many other planets that other planets that you highlight for me as being important, that stood out to me as being really relevant to your questions. But then also that South Node on the ascendant. South Node being our past, being everything that our culminative experiences, accumulative from our past lives, and whatever dynamics we might still have with that we're working out here, maybe applying to our purpose going forward if you have a square to the nodes. And it doesn't look like you have a square to the nodes, except for that you don't have a planet squaring the nodes, but that IC and the MC, the midheaven, and then the IC are squaring your nodes. And so that has so much to do with the IC being of the fourth house, the beginning of the fourth house. It's our family life and how we really formed in our family life, and who we relate to ourselves as being in that dynamic. And then with the MC being who we are out in society. And so it makes sense to me that you're asking about how to integrate those things and with regards to your parents and what they represent as far as the kind of, especially with your dad being the social responsibility. Are you still there? I just want to make sure. It's hard when I can't see everyone. Oh, okay, you're there. So, so these being square to your nodes represent a bit of a skip step. And so it's something that needs to be resolved. And the fact that this is, you noted on the ascendant, it's just so interesting to me how much your past feels like it's playing a part in your current lifetime. It feels like you're not going to be able to get away from it. It's going to be front and center in everything that you're doing in this lifetime. And resolving things from past lives, which isn't necessarily a negative thing. The fact that that south node is in Pisces, so it's squared. It's conjunct your ascendant, but it's in the 12th house. Yeah, it's in Pisces. But I meant to say in the 12th house. So so that's a real culmination. It feels like this whole lifetime is just such a big culmination. From past experiences and integration. So culmination being just time to integrate so many things. That really strong Leo energy and the Leo ascendant and that Leo south node shows that energy really is front and center. It is showing up to be in order to be expressed. You know, it's not anything that Leo energy is nothing to shy away from. It's going to force itself out. Your sun too in Leo and its natural sign and everything. It's like, this is here, you're here to express it. You know, that's nothing to, that there's nothing wrong with that, you know? So the impulse is to be in that, in your own creative power and your own creative potential. But there's something about your past that's keeping that from being fully resolved. And that would be that the square to your nodes. And that's interesting. I've never really looked at that before, but it does feel to me that that's really relevant. Specifically the fact that that would be those two lines that would be square your nodes, those 2 points versus just being an actual planet, you know. But because those represent family and culture, it represents who we develop into in our family life versus what it looks like when we really show up in the world. Those two things have to be really integrated for you in order to really move on to your north node and really activate everything that's there for you. It's something that your north node is something that you've already been working on, and it's why you're so gracious. It's why you feel oriented towards service. It's the like you said, that Libra and Uranus being trining that. It's just bringing in a lot of supportive energy around having more of an objective way of seeing things and being able to apply yourself more objectively, but from a really a place where you're really strong in your heart and really strong in your spirit. So when it comes to how to be fully embodied and be integrated, it's that Leo energy does have a big part to play in it, you know. And you were gone for the beginning of my talk, but I was talking about the importance of, as I know that I'm trying to figure out what people are saying here in the chat. I apologize, but if somebody would mind just actually telling me if there's something I should know or if they have a question, because I can't actually see the chat, so I'm sorry.
They're just saying thank you, Sugar.
Nothing's happening there. Can you please, I'm just going to pause the recording for a moment.
Okay.
Okay. And if you could pause, I won't get you to pause yours. It might just cause trouble. Just hang on.
Yeah. All right. So whenever I was setting up the talk, I talked about what embodiment means. And for everyone else, I won't repeat everything here, but the balancing out of the different points in the chart, what that does is it brings you into a place where you can fully embody yourself and your place in the divine order of everything. Whenever we're viewing the chart either from one angle or another, you know, that's putting us into a dualistic mindset, a dualistic way of experiencing the world. So whenever you're able to really allow yourself to fully embody what's there for you in your chart and to not resist it, it can help you to become an integrated person. And when you're integrated, you have both of the yin and the yang active inside of you. Fully, it's the masculine and the feminine together inside. It's the possibility for in yourself. It's the place where, and if the mother and father archetype are brought in for us in learning these lessons, a lot of times the solution is really to acknowledge where you're parenting yourself and acknowledge where you're being parented from a higher power, from a higher source, which is very much Leo. It's very creative. I think I'm showing you my chart now. Yeah, so it's very Leo. It's very creative. It's that life force, you know. And whenever another way of looking at the father in the chart is the sun, as opposed to Saturn. So some people look at the mother and father as the moon and the sun. And that feels really good to me when it's in terms of seeing the father more as the creator, instead of like the house father, where the father might be represented more as the creator, from a much more direct way of seeing that father energy, that creator energy, as opposed to the more of the socially conditioned provider. You know, that's different. And it feels like for you, that integration is really lying in the full expression of those Leo archetypes, and your ability to really truly embody that within yourself. And so integrating the archetype of mother and father within, and really allowing yourself to separate from your actual parents, allowing yourself to really move on from that, and acknowledge too that whatever they were holding for you was much more relative to lessons that you were coming in here to look at and work through, much more tied to your past. But you don't necessarily need to stay in your past. You're supposed to gather all of that energy up and kind of move forward. So there's things that they can show you, but that it's not that you have to necessarily resolve all of those things in order to be whole and to be able to move forward, that resolve all of their things. It's just maybe shifting, and so that you can let go of those things and just focus on what you need to parent yourself, and what you need to be able to kind of get on with doing your work, because your work is important. That's all I'm going to say on that piece. That feels like the extent of what felt like truth coming out, you know, for me. And if I elaborated further, I might go away from that feeling. So I'm curious to know if you have any questions or thoughts on that at this point.
Well, you were talking about past lives. Does that include, what didn't say past life, but past? Does that include ancestors?
What's that?
You were talking about me working a lot with the past.
Yes.
Does that include ancestors, like grandparents, or?
Well, it does, to the extent that your IC and your MC are so highlighted, because that's where you find the ancestral connections. When we look at past lives, and we're looking at the soul's culmination from past in astrology, we're looking at more of our souls, like our own incarnations throughout time. But with but when you're looking at ancestors, and definitely like doing ancestral clearing, you know, clearing ancestral karmas and family karmas, we see that more in that IC and MC. So for you, it feels like that would tie in.
Well, actually, maybe it's not a subject of this meeting, but my paternal grandfather, he had his moon in Cancer, conjunct my moon in Cancer. He worked independently. I am his only descendant working independently. All of my cousins and siblings are employees.
Yeah.
So and he didn't get the right value for his work. He was always underpaid, and I'm the one who has to. I'm feeling that I need to collect what he didn't collect, like repair that, get the right value for my work.
Yes, right. That's beautiful. And I probably should go ahead and close up the talk. I wanted to see just how that felt for you as a stopping point, because we can go a little bit longer if there's anything else that you're needing.
Yes, maybe I should contact you privately and we can schedule a reading later.
Yeah. Always, I'm always available to connect.
Thank you, because I understand we are.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And is there anybody else who might have any questions or thoughts or anything else to share? Okay. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for coming.
Wonderful, Melanie. Thank you so much. It was beautiful. Thank you. And thank you, Francisco.
Thank you, Don. Thank you, Melanie.
Yeah, you take care, guys. We'll see you next time.